I wonder if you agree with me. One of the most striking lines in the high-level panel report is a proposal that that a goal will not be deemed to have been met unless it's met for all of the social groups. And indeed, how can you talk about success if 50% of the population or any significant portion of the population are effectively locked out? You simply cannot do so. Thank you for that. Now let me just switch over to Roberto Bissio. Roberto, I already hinted at what I'm going to ask you, but let me just tell our audience first that in addition to being the coordinator of Social Watch, and for those of you who don't know Social Watch is effectively an accountability mechanism within civil society because it does monitor government commitments around poverty eradication, gender justice, and other issues. But Roberto, in addition, is the executive director of the Third World Institute, and he has been a member of the UN Civil Society Advisory Committee as well. One of the toughest nuts to crack, Roberto, in all of this is how to bring human rights into the global partnership for development, into the international reform side of the agenda. For many critics of the MDGs, perhaps MDG 8 ended up being the weakest or the least advanced of the goals that had been put forward. And the demand that we've been hearing is that if you want it to work at home, you've got to make it also work abroad. How do we make sure that we integrate those international human rights norms and standards that are binding on all member states also in the international level? How do we make sure we have a global partnership for development that advances the kind of society that's envisaged in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, in the Declaration on the Right to Development, in the International Human Rights Covenants, and so on? Roberto Bissio.
Tough question, huh? Thank you very much. Thanks so much for being here. It's a real pleasure. As you said, Social Watch monitors what the government's promised to do. The government promised to eradicate poverty, promised gender equity back in '95, and they not just promised, but made it international law, the whole human rights architecture. And the Ligue Tunisienne des Droits de l'Homme is a member of Social Watch, and we have their reports in many of our global reports. But now a member of the League is a minister, and I am sure he wants to deliver on all these rights: right to health, right to education, right to social security, dignity for all. So he goes to the finance minister and says, yeah, this is the budget that I need to deliver on our promise and legal obligations of my country. And I can imagine what the answer of the finance minister is. Hey, we have the IMF breathing on our neck. We have a limitation. We have expenditure. There is no money. So how come there is no money? Why don't we tax people? No, we exempted them because we needed to attract investments. Yeah, well, cut those exemptions. Are they delivering? And so on. No, we cannot because we have investment treaties. And they will sue us. And they will sue us not in our courts, but in arbitration panels, as is happening in my country, Uruguay. Try to protect the right to health and put some limits on tobacco corporations. It's being sued in that arbitration panel. Just to pay for the lawyers is millions and millions of dollars to make a defense. Now, think about those rights. The right to establish yourself in any part of the world that you want. The right to bring in all your friends once you are established there. The right to do whatever activity you want in that country. And the right to sue the government if they don't want to allow you to do what you want, and reclaim the money that you were expected to gain that has been expropriated to you, not in a local court, but in a court made by your peers and friends. All those rights exist. They were created by political decisions, and all those rights are rights for corporations. Now, the imbalance between the ability that these corporations have to enforce those rights. And the lack of teeth of the enforcement of human rights is what lies at the heart of our worry here. And it is that imbalance that created the inequalities, or that exacerbated the inequalities. Inequalities have many roots, we know that. And it's not just economic, and it's cultural, and it's based on gender, on race, on many aspects, and so on. But the fact is that over the last 25 years, inequalities all around the world, including in the richest countries of the world, has been exacerbated. With the exception of Latin America, I'm proud to say, which is the only region in the world where inequalities have been decreasing in the last decade. Now, why is that? Because of the disproportionate assignation of rights that has actually occurred. Now, when I was making that point with some lawyers and human rights experts, they were telling me, no. Corporations have privileges. Humans have rights. Yeah, so well, what's the difference? The difference is human rights are inalienable. Privileges are revocable. Privileges are given in exchange of something. So yes, I can give tax exemption, or I can give many other privileges to somebody because it will bring in development, it will create jobs, it will prevent whatever. It's a deal in there, it's a bargain, and that bargain we should be able to revoke if it doesn't deliver. Now, globally, that bargain has not delivered, and we know that. The liberalization of trade and finances, trade multiplied by 5, global GDP multiplied by 2, but human indicators, basic indicators, are not progressing. On the contrary, they slowed down. They keep advancing, but they are advancing now slower than they were advancing 2 decades before. Now that basic imbalance we need to address, and we have the instruments. We have the Universal Periodic Review of Human Rights. We have the guiding principles on human rights and extreme poverty that say that corporations, multinational institutions, non-state actors are also accountable to the human rights implications of what they do. And we have to bring that to that framework. And we have, this year, now entering the force, the optional protocol to the Convention on Social, Economic, and Cultural Rights, which means that individuals, NGOs can sue the governments if the rights are not put in place. But that doesn't solve the question. How can the governments recover their tax base, recover their own income, or even claim from the more powerful governments the meeting of their commitments, called aid, which has not been met? Now, we NGOs sometimes go around and say, oh, African governments have not met the MDGs. Haven't they? I mean, what about the governments that were supposed to provide the means to meet those MDGs and that haven't met their obligation? Who and where are they being made accountable? Now, these are the key problems that the current debate has to solve. And we do have the instruments existing to do that, and already agreed. We don't need to create any new goals. They're all in there, as the High Commissioner very well said in the introductory speech, in the already agreed human rights framework. And we have the framework of accountability. What we have to do is say that is the framework, and not a framework distorted by donor-recipient relations in the aid framework, where really there is no possibility of equivalence. You know, the disproportion has been so high. The reports that are on the table, we have the voice of business. Where is the voice of workers? You know, the UN system, the ILO is tripartite in that case, workers, employers, the state. Our current system and the new proposed agenda is not just business as usual. It's business. Thank you.
Roberto Bissio, thank you very much. Good stuff. Hard to talk about human rights, democracy, rule of law if we're not willing also to take it up to the international level. So I think important part of the discussion. I'm going to move along very quickly now to our Assistant Secretary General for Human Rights.